New video overnight showed a group raiding a container ship linked to a London-based Israeli billionaire in the Gulf of Oman near the Strait of Hormuz. Moments ago, Iran state media said Revolutionary Guard commandos carried out the attack and seized control of the ship. Today, the Israeli army vowed Iran will bear consequences for escalating tension. President Biden warned Friday that any attack by Iran would be a grave mistake. The attacks would be in response to the April 1st Israeli bombing of Iran's consulate in Damascus, Syria, that left 2 senior commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard dead. Natalie Brand is at the White House with more. Natalie, good morning.
Good morning, Dana. Sources have told CBS News the retaliation could include attacks carried out by both Iranian forces and proxy groups Iran has been funneling additional arms to around the region. When asked about an attack, President Biden warned Iran, quote, "Don't."
We are devoted to the defense of Israel. We will support Israel. We will help defend Israel, and Iran will not succeed.
A message from President Biden to Tehran and its proxies as the U.S. also takes steps to protect its troops, personnel, and facilities in the region. A U.S. official tells CBS News that the attack aimed at military targets in Israel could include more than 100 drones, 150 cruise missiles, and even ballistic missiles used for long-range strikes.
Iran is trying to stress the Israeli defense system.
Retired General Frank McKenzie is the former Mideast commander.
If there's a significant mass casualty event inside Israel, then I think the possibility of escalation is very, very high.
The Pentagon's top commander for the Middle East traveled to Israel as international leaders, including from the U.S., are trying to tamp down tensions. A U.S. official confirms that multiple messages, written and verbal, have been sent back and forth to Iran from the U.S. through intermediaries.
I think revenge is coming, but I'm just not sure about that massive Iranian sort of ballistic drone strike on Israel, because that invites an American retaliation turn.
Alex Vatanka of the Middle East Institute says he believes the Iranian regime will try to avoid U.S. intervention.
You can't point to a single country in the region that really wants to see a regional war. I don't think the Iranians want it. I don't think the Israelis want it. Certainly the United States doesn't want to see it.
Now, a defense official tells CBS News the U.S. is moving additional assets to the region to bolster regional deterrence efforts and also increase protection for U.S. forces. One of those assets is a Navy destroyer that has repositioned to be closer to Israel if needed. Jeff?
Natalie, thank you.
How imminent do you think an attack on Israel is from Iran, Mr. President?
I want to get this secure information, but my expectation sooner than later.
What's your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't.
A Fox News alert, Joe Biden yesterday with that one-word warning to Iran, as the U.S. expects the Iranian regime to strike multiple targets inside Israel in the coming days. They're forecasting that. The White House remains on high alert, saying it is in constant communication with Israeli leaders over the prospect of a serious escalation in the region. Let's bring in retired U.S. Air Force General Philip Breedlove. General, thanks for being here. So how are those two things congruent, right? We know, we're being told that attack is imminent, the size and scope of which we don't know. But yet the president is saying don't? So what do we make of all that?
Well, Pete, thanks for having me back on. I think we've said don't more than once recently, and yeah, I'm not sure that that's a message that really has standing in the world to these terrorists and to Iran, the backers of the terrorists.
Okay, so if it doesn't have standing, does that mean they escalate at their, based on their calculation of what's beneficial for them? Are they even factoring in an American response, or do they think we won't do anything?
Well, I think that they fear first and foremost an Israeli response. I mean, the Hamas, remember Hamas starts in Iran and ends in Iran. Hamas has already struck, and we're in a war because of their first strike into Israel, and Israel has forcibly replied. I'm fairly certain that Iran does not fear America retaliating in the Middle East. I've said more than once that our policies towards Iran, towards China, Taiwan, towards North Korea, they're all being written in Ukraine, and we are not responding in Ukraine either. So,
General, when you look at the totality of the threats we face across the globe and at home, what worries you the most? What has you most concerned? When you're putting America first, you're looking at America and saying, okay, America's interests are served or not served by the following things happening. What concerns you?
So I put us and our forces first all the time. My children wear the cloth of this nation. And I think that what worries me the most is that I see a lack of Western leadership, and specifically, I see a retreat of U.S. leadership in these larger issues around the world. We started off in recent campaigns by saying all the things that we won't do and all the things that we are afraid of. And then we build our reactions and actions based on those statements and those fears. And I think the world is watching the leadership dynamic at the top of the Western thinking changing.
Yeah, we're not setting the agenda. You're right. We're not leading boldly and speaking clearly and acting clearly about what benefits us. And as a result, we're sort of whiplashed by all these other prerogatives and look foolish in the process. General Philip Breedlove, thank you for your service and the service of your family. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You got it, sir.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Let's return now to our breaking news out of Australia. Police in Sydney say they're responding to a major incident at a major shopping centre. These are live pictures coming to us from a helicopter hovering above the Westfield shopping centre at Bondi Junction. There are reports multiple people have been stabbed. Well, let's get the latest on this with our reporter Phil Mercer, who's in Sydney. What can you tell us, Phil?
Well, this all began just over an hour ago local time. At 4 p.m, the police say that they were called after receiving multiple alerts from the Bondi Junction shopping centre, the big Westfield shopping centre there. It's a very modern complex, about 2 kilometres from Sydney's famous Bondi Beach. And as you rightly say, we are hearing reports that multiple people have been stabbed and also reports of gunshots. And in the last few minutes, we've received a statement from the police, the New South Wales State Police here in Eastern Australia, confirming that one person has been shot. We don't know who that person is and how they are involved in this incident. Now, the ambulance service here in Sydney is suggesting that there have been 2 alleged offenders, and one of whom has been shot by the police. But at the moment, as you can imagine, it's a very fluid, chaotic situation. Shoppers forced to flee the Westfield shopping centre, and reports too that there are people still inside. And as you would expect, an enormous response by the emergency services, armed police combing through, we understand, the shopping centre, combing the roof. And this is once again a very chaotic, fluid incident here in the city of Sydney.
And Phil, late afternoon, early evening in Sydney, presumably there would have been many people at the mall at that time. What are the members of the public being advised to do?
To stay away from the area. We heard a report from one man who was actually inside the shopping centre saying that he heard the commotion, he heard shots ring out, and that the member of staff working in the shop behaved extremely heroically, ushering all the shoppers into the back of the shop, locking up the premises and leading those people outside to safety. So the police are urging people to avoid the area. This is the start of the school holidays in Sydney, so many people would have been enjoying what has been a very warm autumn's day here in Sydney, heading to the Westfield shopping centre, one of the busiest in Sydney, as I say, only a short distance from Sydney's famous Bondi Beach. And at the moment, the police are working their way through the centre, we understand, trying to establish who's responsible and what exactly has happened.
Phil, thank you very much. That's our correspondent in Sydney, Phil Mercer.
Well, here's another example for you. In California, California has spent $28 billion to combat the homeless crisis. That's a lot of money since 2018 for a state that doesn't have a budget surplus. Well, we had Steve Garvey, the U.S. Senate candidate from California, former major leaguer, on the program earlier, talking about what kind of return have they gotten for that. Here's what he said.
I think the thing is, it's a lack of leadership. There are encampments there, and there are homeless walking on the beach, and stores are shut because also what comes with homelessness is crime. We're up to about 186,000 homeless now, 16% more in the last year, and that's with $30 billion being sent in California. There's a lack of oversight. The California Interagency Council on Homelessness stopped counting or trying to figure out where the money was going in 21. They've reignited that. But let's face it, this is one of the most compassionate issues in our lives.
He should be willing to move to upstate New York, where there's a much different mix of people, a much different jury pool. But, you know, they just seem determined to take him to trial in New York City, in Manhattan, in a really difficult environment for President Trump to be successful. Now, on the point of him testifying, obviously his lawyers haven't made that decision yet. You know, having tried cases myself, you don't determine whether or not to put the defendant on the stand until you know how the evidence comes in and how your case is going. Remember, there's just so many bad legal issues in this. This is not, these are not felony claims. You know, the reason they're elevated to felonies is because of this election issue, election finance issue that's already been determined by the Federal Election Commission to not be a violation of law. And so there's just so many issues that this case should not be going to trial on Monday. But, you know, here we go. And so we're going to have to, you know, buckle up and be ready.